Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Today we're going to be celebrating 500 subscribers. I finally made it on this channel. I have another channel called Short Story Focus, and of course on that one all I do is review short stories, but on this channel I do anything I want. So lately I've been reviewing art books and having a good time with it, but I wanted to show these two books because they have these amazing Boris Vallejo covers, and also they're by Philip Jose Farmer, who is a really big longtime favorite of mine ever since I was a kid. And I got these by entering a book giveaway at a Whatnot book auction with the Book Rapport. So if you're not aware of Whatnot, it is an app where you can go and bid on all kinds of stuff. But one of the big communities that has really taken off there is old science fiction books. So I recommend finding the Book Rapport on Whatnot. He has excellent deals, and it's always a good time. He's a super nice guy, and he's always a lot of fun to talk to. And plus, the book prices are incredibly reasonable. I've got a pile of paperbacks I'm very happy with, and I got them all through the Book Rapport. So that is not a paid endorsement or anything else. I just do that for the Book Rapport because I really like him and I really want to see him do well. And also, if you like to get science fiction books affordably, then I'd like to see you do well too. So it's a good place to go and do it. Today, the book that we're going to review is this amazing book by Wayne Barlowe. For our 500 subscriber special, we're going to take a deep dive into the book Expedition by Wayne Douglas Barlowe. And of course, as with all videos, there will be coffee. On your end, hopefully there's coffee too, or a shot of whiskey, perhaps a beer, something else you'd like to drink. Hey, if you're making Manhattans, go ahead. But let's all kick back and take a deep dive into this very interesting book, starting now. I got this book as a birthday present, and that's because the birthday is Sunday. So on Sunday, I will be older. On Sunday, I will have completed another trip around the sun, and thus it's my birthday. And so ahead of schedule, my wife got me this as a birthday present. And what an excellent birthday present, right? I mean, just look at this. This is an older book. It's from the 90s, and this particular edition is in really good shape. It's been well cared for. Now, I know a little bit of the backstory of this book, so I thought I would go into it just a little bit. This book is part of the book collection of an artist who I believe is recently deceased, which is unfortunate, of course. But he had a gigantic collection of art books, and my book buyer, the guy who runs a really nice store in downtown Lancaster, called Dog Star Books. I had told him that I was interested in getting any Wayne Barlowe art books that gentleman might have had in that collection. And, you know, I came into the store 2 months later, and here he was holding this for me before he put it out there on sale, which I thought was very nice. And that's what you get when you get to know your hometown booksellers, and when you support them. You get interesting things like this once in a while. And, you know, it really is a nice exchange. I have another book from that man's collection. I have did I just bump the camera? If I did, I apologize. I also have, I'm just stretching here to get it. I also have Lightship by Jim Burns, and we're going to do a walkthrough on that one too. Now, Jim Burns is one of my all-time favorites. So I will just say at the beginning that I have, of course I've looked through this. I haven't read this yet. I'm just anxious to show you the art. I don't think there's anything in this book that wouldn't be considered rated G. Now, the Ken Burns book, on the other hand, is definitely, did I say Ken Burns? Jim Burns. The Jim Burns book is adults only. But this one, anyone can have a look at this book. So, you know, you don't have to clear the room for this one. And I do hope that you enjoy it. So let's take a look through it now. In the interest of preserving this beautiful cover, which shows no sign of distress, you know, outside of this corner here. You can see that this corner has a little tear in it, but I mean, it is otherwise in good shape. We're going to go ahead and remove it though, because I don't want to stress it. I don't want it getting rubbed around and bent around. It is a very nice cover though, you know, and as book lovers, we appreciate things like this. So I thought I would just stretch it out here for you. Just fill in the whole frame and then some. And I know sometimes you like to read this kind of stuff, so I'm going to hold that right there. And then if you want to do a pause, you can go ahead and get a good look at it there. And then here's the comments, the blurbs on the back. And I mean, check that out, a blurb from Robert Silverberg. Your life is complete. There's a little bit of commentary on the back in case you would like to read it yourself. Let me give you a chance to pause the image and have a look. And so we look at the end here. This book is in excellent condition otherwise. I have no complaints. There's a little bit of yellowing here. The artist, who had a wonderful giant studio, and I got to see some of his work, and this guy was a real deal, fantastic fantasy artist who lived locally here. These books got hit by the sun quite a bit. So I know that I saw some of the other books from his collection and they were sun faded, and that is unfortunate. But he was actually using them for inspiration. He wasn't messing around. And you know, I remember listening to a car designer speaking one time about working with his students in classes when they were designing things and working all day long. And then when he also worked in industry, and he said they did the same thing. They would get out art books, and most commonly they would get out Sid Mead art books, which are very valuable and expensive, and they just have them on the shelf, and they would look at them for inspiration. So artists and designers, they definitely feed off each other for that kind of inspiration. So now we're ready to take a dive in. Oh, and by the way, if I was going to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 old book smell, 12.5. Holy cow. These end papers are in great shape. I do just see some various marks and stuff. It's really not a big deal. So the book expedition is actually about an expedition to Planet Darwin 4 in 2358. And it looks like that is an actual patch that somebody had made. And if you were ever in the military, you remember that all someone has to do is design a patch and show a patch maker an idea. And you know, even in the 80s or the 90s, they could spin up a patch like that for you at no time. People who make patches and patch making machines, they were always good at doing that kind of stuff. So here's our first look at the layout for this planet that is considered to be Darwin 4. We can see its glaciers listed here. Planetia Australis, Lago de Gama, Chasma Cook, Lacus Tasman. Look at all these interesting names. Chasma Barentis, Mar Amebicus. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on there. That's a pretty simplistic landmass design for a map, but I guess that's kind of how they play out. Doesn't appear to be a whole lot of ocean going on there, huh? But there is something quite like that on the planet, though, as we get into it. So here we have the first work of art, and the most striking thing that sticks out to me almost immediately when I look at that is just how there's light reflecting in that pool, and it's pink light. That is really fantastic. I love that. And all of these various creatures and things. And I know this is like some kind of organism that's actually moving towards the artist. That's pretty neat. And here we have the table of contents and the acknowledgments and dedication to Shauna and Kaylee. And as far as I can see, this is first printing September 1990, copyright 1990. So this would be a hardback first edition. So that's quite a find. I paid a little bit for this book, but I still feel like I paid a reasonable price considering how old it is and also the good shape that this book is in. So I'm very happy with it as a birthday present. I'm also really thrilled that my wife got it for me, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy having a look through it with me. So in the introduction, from what I can see, they had a satellite that goes out and it gets a good look around and it sees this. This is the image that comes back from the first, I guess it's probably a probe of some kind launched to Darwin 4. And I mean, if we launched a probe to a planet and we got an image back like that, we'd be on our way, right? The strength of Wayne Barlowe's art, it really just blows me away sometimes. The guy has such an ability and an affinity for creating animal forms that just seem probable, and yet they aren't. Genetically mutated earth cows, blind and impotent, sit atop a hill in a zoo exhibit. These specimens are typical of the larger fauna left on Earth, nightmarish forms genetically ravaged by pollution. I don't think Wayne sees a bright future for humanity. These are the observation pods that the people sit in when they get to the planet to observe the fauna on the planet. It says, powered with the mighty Tsar turbofan engine and equipped with a wide array of detection and recording devices, the Yama-designed hover cone was essential to our exploration of Darwin 4's varied terrain. Mine faltered only once. That would be an interesting place to hang out and look around. So here it's showing that upon planetfall, the hover cones would detach from the main craft, and they're showing a bunch of them coming down. So there'd be more than one artist doing that, which would probably be nice. I wouldn't necessarily want to be all alone on a planet like that, but I guess it would be fun. And it's showing the various capabilities of the cone. So it looks like Wayne came up with a way to fully rationalize and justify the usage of the hover cone, which is pretty cool. It's a great use of scenario, which is definitely something that an artist wants to do. One of the expedition's orbit stars was especially fitted out for human comfort and safety. This was characteristic of the sensitivity and consideration shown by our benefactors, the Yama. So I don't know who the Yama are. This would probably be worth looking into. But here we have a FlexTech video audio pod, and that is a fascinating idea for basically a recording device of some kind. It certainly has a kind of a bioform technology to it. It says the predatory pronghead is an archetypal Darwinian bipedal alien, heavily muscled and very agile. It is capable of running down large game either on its own or in hunting pods. And that is a pretty cool looking creature there. One of the neat things about Barlowe, I feel, is that he has these wonderful paintings, but he also does these great drawings of the work. I mean, he's got it down, kind of front to back. He's conceptualizing the animal in various ways before painting them. It just seems like such a pile of work to do, but it really, really pays off. It's kind of cool reading there. You see some different things here. It says 5 years have passed since our return to Earth. Since then, I have been hard at work in my studio, which, lined with sketches and mementos, has become a veritable shrine to Darwin 4 and its creatures. Darwin 4 and its creatures. Outside, a defiled planet is trying to cleanse itself, while I, in my sanctuary, have tried to select those images that might best depict another healthier world. So there you go. And I leave you to draw your own conclusions from that concept. This thing has like a dagger appendage for a tongue, or maybe some kind of, in the way that insects use ovipositors and things like that. That is really, really interesting. I suppose the word interesting will get used a lot. Look at the detail for the folding of the flesh where it would bend and stretch. Really, really well thought through. There appears to be wounds and different kinds of gaseous things that you see on larger animals all the time. and they don't seem to mind at all. It says here, few of the liquivores of Darwin 4 have true draws as they see with sonar. None possess eyes. This close-up study of the bolt tongue shows the forward sensory package and tongue sheath, which at a distance can look eerily like a head with eyes. That's some nightmare fuel right there. Thornbacks grazing in shadow of steeplegourds. So that's a steeplegourd. And there's a bunch of thornbacks raising hell on the open plain. Rayback and gyro sprinter. There's an interesting example of the gyro sprinter. This says plate 2. This was the most bizarre creature I had ever laid eyes upon. Well, I guess if you arrive at an alien world, you're going to see a lot of that. The skin has that leather-like quality that I feel like Wayne Barlowe captures so well. These are living creatures, bones and muscle and skin and sinew and just all kinds of things going on, and he just stretches the life form over the frame so well. I'm sure that other people have copied it in the meantime, but as far as rendering animals that have never existed, Wayne Barlowe is definitely the guy who made it best. Most of Darwin 4's predators are highly specialized and selective in their choice of prey, but the ill-tempered rayback will go after anything that moves, such as the hammer-headed veltwing shown here. The first one I encountered repeatedly attacked my hover cone. So there's one in action. The gyrosprinter's 2-meter-long tongue rolls up and rests within a chest cavity between its two hearts. The cephalon at the end of its neck contains no brain. That's another interesting thing that you see later in his hell work, is these kind of like empty skull type creations that are still living things. They're still connected to living organisms, but they themselves are, white bone or thinly skinned covered bony protuberances that for all intents and purposes are heads, but they aren't. It's hellish and freaky and disturbing, and I love it. There's another representation. It seemed obvious that the animal was built for speed. Here's something called the prairie ram, talking about being a specialized creature. The ubiquitous prairie ram is what it says. This is the arrow tongue, which we saw earlier, and thornback. This is of course, a different angle, but you really get the sense for the hollowness of this arrow tongue, which I guess it uses to suck the liquid out of its prey. They're like the term that was used was liquivore. It looked to me as lethal and as threatening as any predator I had seen on Darwin 4. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be facing that without some armor between me and it. The thornback's flexible bony plates, or scrutes, and 2-meter-long horn provided the creature with formidable defenses even while it is asleep. When fleeing, the tripedal aliens gather in tightly packed herds that confuse their pursuers with deceptive sonar images. Huh, that's a great idea. Oh, and I suppose here they are in action. A pod of 8 thornbacks burst into view. He could do a whole nother book on just the plants of the planet. Darwin 4's various plants, maybe some of them are psychoactive. That would be interesting. The psychoactive mushrooms of Darwin 4. That could be Wayne's next book. It says here the jet darter retracts and folds its legs into aerodynamic trim for flight. What a great idea. Powerful accelerator muscles extend the arrow tongue's 8-meter long killing and feeding organ with lightning speed and deadly accuracy. Okay, so the red thing in its mouth shoots out a long way. That's even freakier. I like that in a perverse sort of way. A splendid tripedal alien bounded over a nearby ridge. So here we have the prismalope and the butcher tree. And here's the butcher tree, which is another excellent example of Wayne Barlowe creating a plant-like organism that looks like it could also be full of, I don't know, bone and muscle instead of plant material. It's more like a non-moving animal than a plant type creature, and yet it is also a plant. So I don't know, imagining a plant with skin is kind of a fascinating idea, and Wayne Barlowe captures that so well in the textures and the style of his work. I've always really liked that confusing, disorienting mix of features in his art and in his work, and clearly in his imagination too. So here we have these things sticking up out of the ground, and they appear to be a side view of this. It's a frond with a barb. You can see it comes out from under the ground. These type of grassland animals and stuff. It says a variety of Darwin forest predators feed on the fast-breeding prismalope, which is what we saw on the previous page. The butcher tree has underground tentacles that terminate in fronds, and they mimic other things. And then this poor dude's going to come up and get hooked by the frond, and the butcher tree is waiting. And I mean, the butcher tree does appear to have spikes. So it's not looking good for the prismalope. The butcher tree has an interesting predatory style. And we're not really seeing it in action, but you can imagine what happens. Oh, here we go. So I guess if you disturb the frond, you get the spear. The butcher tree forms a stationary extended family with a radius of a few yards. It spawns its young in the form of still connected buds, feeding them through umbilici until they have developed their own hooking fronds and spear-tipped limbs and can hunt for themselves. So maybe that's what's going on here. This is an offspring. This is the bait. This is the animal. We haven't really seen the feeding process yet, but I mean, I guess it gets dumped up into there some way. It's like a much more mobile Venus flytrap. Got to enjoy a little coffee? Stand by. My videos are unsponsored, but I would like to say that this Avensi mug really does make coffee taste just wonderful. I'm going to be careful holding that over my super cool book. But anyway, this is a one-of-a-kind mug. It's kind of like a wine glass for coffee. And you can just look down into the depths of beautiful, wonderful coffee. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to the book. All right, enough of that tree. The forest and periphery. Here we see a rayback out at dusk. Here we have something called the groveback. Pulling itself over the crest of a hill was a huge dark form, and that would be the groveback. There's a great representation of it. The arrowtongue and prismalope roam the vast grasslands of Darwin 4, while the groveback is also a creature of the plains. It carries a forest on its vast dorsal carapace, categorizing it as a forest peripheral. That's a great idea. Here we have something called flipsticks. I'm not entirely sure what we're seeing here just yet. It's the first time I'm taking a good look at them. Those are really, truly odd creatures. Without warning, the cylindrical animals launched themselves into the sky. What are all these other little guys? What are they doing? Fascinated by that. Some kind of... As with everything that Wayne Barlowe does, there's a detailed explanation of the biology and anatomy of the creatures. It's one of the things that he's always brought to his art in various ways, and it really does make him next level. So this is definitely worth your time to read if you want to pause and read on that. Standing 60 meters tall, flipsticks can throw themselves as high as 3 times their own height into the air. I have seen them cover half again this distance laterally in a single awesome leap. The sound of their inhalations can be mistaken for the deep roar of the plains wind. And this creature, I guess, is called a gel sucker, which would make it a threat possibly to these things. And so this would be an escape mechanism from predators. It's a good idea. This shows a dead groveback, and it said, even in death, grovebacks possess awesome dignity and power, and he was privileged to witness this specimen's last few minutes before scavengers began arriving rather quickly. Forest slider and gulper. Look at those guys up there. They have these like orbs on them, flying creatures. I can't tell if they go that way or that way. I think maybe that way. 3 hook-tailed flyers burst out of the foliage and startled the forest sliders. Great idea for a bark pattern. There's a truly confusing looking creature. Forest sliders seem genuinely unperturbed by the loss of their hind limbs. In fact, I noticed an increase in mobility once the legs were shed. While the body may appear ponderous, it is actually lightweight and can be lifted from the ground to execute rapid turns. Gotta have some more coffee. The silence was broken by the same wailing cry I heard upstream. This is a creature I think that feeds a little bit like a Venus flytrap, in that it traps its prey and then digests them. No death on Darwin 4 seemed more horrible to me than that suffered by the spade nose lured into the gulper's maw. It was literally digested alive, while its muffled screams testified every hideous moment of its prolonged death. And so I think what we see there is kind of a cross-section of the creature called a gulper, and this poor unfortunate stuck inside of it. There's some life cycle ideas there. So here we have the iconic dagger wrist. Each creature began to hone its daggers on the rough bark. So that would appear to be what it's doing there. Its head is kind of this two-piece assembly. And dagger wrist, I mean, what a great name. I don't recall seeing Wayne's signature on a lot of his art, but I don't go looking for it either. But there it is. It's pretty cool. That's from 1984, and this book is from the 90s. So this kind of stuff was, this kind of work was a long time in the making, I would assume. As I recall, there is a paperback version of this book, which is also very nice, and I kind of think I'm going to get it too. And this is what's on the cover, is this work of art, because it is truly stunning. I mean, what a great use of blue to orange, which is a naturally occurring colors in nature, and they also complement each other so well. You know, burnt orange and radiation blue, they just go together so well. While there are many parachuting herbivores in Darwin 4's forests, the dagger wrist is the only gliding predator known to date. Any injury to the glide membrane is serious, and large tears result in an inability to hunt and thus survive. Here are some drawings detailing probably life cycle aspects. Here they are clinging to a tree. Imagine like a sugar glider that wants to kill you. It's kind of a scary thought, huh? This perched, ready to leap kind of thing is really cool. We'll just go to the next page here and see what we got. a little more detail on the head and mouth parts. This says here, 2 head studies showing the complex jaw interface as well as 2 independently mounted portions of the skull. The heavily muscled tube is used exclusively to move and propel the barbed mandible. The remaining thin tubes pump digestive fluids into and out of the mandible. Yeah, that's just a nightmare fuel, terrifying creature idea. But it seems like something that nature would do, right? It's an elegant mixture of things that insects do on this planet, melded with more mammalian behavior on another planet. So that is a pretty neat idea. You know, there are definitely insects that inject their, or expel their digestive fluids before they start feeding. You know, flies, spiders do similar things, right? So there certainly are other insects that do it. So that is very interesting to kind of combine those two things in a mammal or something like a mammal. Oh, I don't want to miss that. Oh, look at that. That is just beautiful. That's a wonderful use of color. Green in the sky, right? I mean, that does happen, usually in tornado weather, but still fascinating. The yellow sky down to orange. It's a beautiful use of color. The animal, if you look closely, this one's got a baby on board. This is definitely, I feel like there are several creatures throughout the book. This is not the only one, but I would say this is definitely one of the apex examples of Wayne Barlowe's creativity. This is just all around a really excellent idea, also executed very well. They're just showing here how active they are as animals. I mean, as you know, with any predator, they're on the hunt. Here's something called finned snapper. The arm is so quick that it virtually disappears when striking. So this thing is some kind of attack appendage. I think this guy might be in trouble. So I suppose that's a prey animal of some kind. Air is drawn in through the fin snapper's grill-like frontal intake and forced out under high pressure through vents under the trailing edge of its fins and tail. So that's how these little creatures fly, I suppose, how it flies. The amoebic sea and littoral zone. Here we have something called the sackback. Here was a rare moment of tenderness on a world where fierceness seemed to rule. And I'm just guessing, but I think the moment of tenderness is right there. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, so I guess part of these creatures, they spend part of their lives underground. Female, left, and male sackbacks are similar in form, but live completely different lives. The male forages the littoral zone for food. The female digs a grave and buries herself to breed. Once underground, she never again emerges into the light. Female sackbacks have never been seen. This is my impression of what one might look like digging out of the subterranean chamber in which it will spend the remainder of its life. That's a hardcore life cycle, man. You grow up, bury yourself, and then that's like the terminal stage of your breeding process. It sounds kind of sad. This is the other example in the book that I thought Barlowe really nailed. The Emperor Sea Strider. Just look at this. This is incredible. It just looks like something that welled up out of a dream, maybe. I would love to be able to ask him how he came up with this idea and how much subconscious exploration does he do to come up with an idea like this. These things are, I don't know, it just looks like the shadows that might pass across a dreamscape. says virtually no force in nature could affect such a creature as the Emperor Sea Strider. The Emperor Sea Strider in its nymph stage is not yet bipedal. The lower spur-like growths serve as stabilizers in flying. These gradually disappear as the feet develop into massive support and feeding platforms. You know, when you look at how Barlowe can create these bony forms with muscle and tendon and sinew and skin the way it would form, you know, like if you've ever seen like a close-up of a whale, you know, it's always amazing that how their skin, bone, blubber, and muscle and everything have to flex and bend to support their girth and their weight. It makes me think that if money were no object, how cool would it be to get Wayne Barlowe to do a big giant book like this full of just spaceships, maybe some of them biological things that exist only in space and others that are built by various civilizations. I mean, to see a mind that is as creative and, I don't know, maybe also biologically integrated into these various forms in the way that Barlowe can do it, wouldn't a book full of spaceships by Wayne Barlowe be fascinating? The unique feeding feet of the Emperor Sea Strider as they appear from below. Each is rimmed with thousands of razor-sharp teeth. I was fortunate enough to be presented with this actual view only from a distance. That's a great adaptation. And there are some various things going on that are explained in that. As always, Barlowe has these great life cycle ideas. Disc flyers are found on or around the amoebic sea. They feed by the hundreds on the sea's surface gel and seem to operate within very distinct 4-kilometer square territories. The Emperor Sea Strider must keep moving for 2 reasons. Its huge bulk demands continuous feeding, and the sea's gelatinous surface cannot otherwise support its weight. So here's some great shots of it in motion. It says here, nymph entry and exit points, and that must have something to do with its breeding cycle. It looked like some bizarre organic cathedral. This is a Sea Strider skull and littoralope. Are those the littoralopes? I suppose they are. That would make a great hiding spot for them. Here's some more life cycle musings. It's always interesting. The awesome cathedral-like cephalon of the Emperor Sea Strider captured my imagination as both architecture and biology. I found it hard to believe that such a creature could ever walk until one almost walked over me. Under our agreement, most of my detailed taxonomic studies of Darwin IV's fauna went directly to Yamaha scientists for the construction of holographic models for museums. I managed to save this schematic of the littoralope, which was one of my favorites. From a skill standpoint, this is interesting how Wayne worked this out on graph paper. Maybe graph paper plays a big role in how he initially designs these things too. Well, this doesn't look good. 50 or so beach quills suddenly burst from the ground. This is called a beach runner. And the beach quill is kind of self-explanatory, but what a great use of color. This use of like purple and pink for these nighttime kind of shadings. And the little pops of color on the creatures. Very well done. This is a creature known as the stripe wing. With the onset of night, the stripe wings began to stir. This was known as a preliminary sketch. That's better than anything I could do, and it's just preliminary. It's dated 1985. Boy, look at that. That is really something. The stripe wings fold themselves into compact shapes for their diurnal sleep on the surface of the amoebic sea. I often saw vast flocks of them bobbing gently on the gel. It's interesting, like a Venus flytrap looking kind of mouth parts there. That is, just so obviously influenced by like a lioness or a dog. It's hard to say completely. There does seem to be some like anthropomorphic aspects to the shoulder and forearm insert there, and maybe even the neck a little bit. It's more like a horse, kind of a horse form there with that large muscle across the neck. It's still really well done the way that is all combined. And here we are in the mountains. The Transalpine floater near Mons Spike. Look at these dudes hanging out down here. So here we go from the mountains. The secret egg chamber filled with rain and protective mud. And they don't look like anything to mess with, do they? The way these forearms are designed, hooking appendages, and of course this head that just looks like it was made to ram into things. Holy cow. They look like nothing to mess with. Also, even though you don't see eyes, they look very alert. That is a great use of imagination and bioform design. It's more of a creature in a push-up position than it is the way an animal would poise itself that way. But I mean, I'm sure that is deliberate. It just really messes with your mind when you start to look at it. It's fascinating. The keeled slider leaves deep parallel furrows in the boggy ground as it drags itself forward with paddle-like paws. Although appearing clumsy, it is not slow, and in fact has been clocked at speeds of up to 25 kilometers per hour on downhill slopes in wet weather. Not easy to get away from. The keeled slider's 2 facial feeding palps are also used in digging its egg chamber. The female then lays eggs far underground where they are fertilized by the male and apparently abandoned to their fate by both parents. Yeah, the interesting and kind of weird thing about them is how much more their forms are inspired by humans than by animals. It's distinctly unnerving in a good way. And there's a lot of that in Wayne Barlowe's art. Here we have a creature called the spring wing, which almost immediately calls to mind mountain goats, right? Arching its back, it snapped out over the abyss. Oh, avalanche victim. How unfortunate. 2 well-placed rocks there. Looks like we have a close-up on mandibles. It's doing other things there. Oh, I guess it can take off and get airborne when it needs to. Here's a creature called the bladderhorn. I've seen this featured with Wayne Barlowe art before, and I've always thought that this was just such a great idea. It just seems to encompass, the close-up of the faces of many, beetles and insects and other creatures, including moths, I would think. And it is so adeptly combined with, mammalian proportions and ideas and size. It's a wonder people didn't think to mix those forms in art this well sooner, but Wayne is definitely the guy who did it. It is a bit difficult to keep a straight face during these protracted encounters. So here it is walking down here. I guess it only has these 2 legs. The bladderhorn's deflated bladders ride its flank on giant antlers. Inflated, their eerie honking cry is one of the most haunting and easily identifiable sounds on the planet. Something that I always like in art, especially with pencil sketching, is like when you take the background and bring it forward, bring the creature forward, or the object, the face, whatever you're doing, forward with a black outline like that. It always makes it interesting. Here we have the tundra. The Arctic sedge glider and tundra plow. It's a little hard to see that because of the page here, but it said, I decided to float along the glacier's edge, surveying its fissured surface. We have these little bulbous flying dudes here, but this creature is fascinating. And there's a lot of stuff explained there. Barlowe is incredibly detailed. The high humped back of the sedge slider contains its sonar bulge, one of the largest of any creature on Darwin 4. It is also a second brain. There's just different poses of the animal. And I would imagine, initially that this is kind of how Wayne works up these creatures, right? Once you're imagining them, then you're imagining them in motion and posing and trying to give the animal, the made-up animal, gesture. So these are interesting gesture studies that then also make great kind of like field notes, scientific field notes. It's a good idea. It seemed a creature uncomfortable with its own method of movement. Okay, so that is alive, whatever that is. Over 1/3 of the tundra plow travels underground, where it finds both food and moisture. Its long, deep furrows are a common feature of the subarctic landscape. The forward tooth pod pulls plants under by their roots so that they seem to disappear magically from the herbivore's path as it travels. Umph and mummy nest flyer. Their stamping and wild bugling echoed in the frozen air. There's something called the ice dart. Definitely nothing to mess with. And there's an unheard parting around a mummy nest. The Unt's twin set of nostrils serve different functions. The forward pair is for respiration. The rear ones are intakes for the trumpeting organs. Interesting detailed design. With blurred wings, it hovered, then landed upon the mummy's head. This is what the mummy nest might have looked like when it was ambulatory. The head has not yet detached and become the separate flyer, which, according to my theory, burrows in and feeds on the desiccated shell of what was once its lower torso. Interesting idea for transformation, much like a caterpillar into a butterfly. Ice crawler and rime runner. Oh, that is just neat. I had a blurred impression of a dark animal speeding over the ice. Man, that is not making contact. It's moving so quickly. Almost has like a jet intake there. That's a great idea. These fronds remind me of, insects like moths, different things like that. And this is certainly also indicative of maybe a dinosaur. These are like pill bugs, sow bugs. An armored relative, possibly. Darwin 4's monopedal aliens are mostly air sifters. An exception is the belly thrower, a fierce predator that ejects its stomach from its oval sphincter and throws it over its prey like a net, then pulls it in slowly, digesting its unfortunate victim even as it struggles to get free. Oh boy. That's a great idea from a science fiction standpoint, isn't it? And holy cow, creepy. In a good way. Can creepy be good? I don't know. Maybe not. That is definitely some imagination at work. It's good stuff. Good scenario for art. What do we have here? The underside of the ice crawler shows its crescent-shaped mouth, which shaves the ice as it crawls. Both the ice crawler and the ice dart are believed to be subspecies of Darwin 4's air sifters, which find their microscopic nutrients in frozen water vapor rather than air. That's a great display of talent to take a creature, design it, and then give it a working underside that also makes sense. A stately flyer, the ebony blisterwing. I would imagine the blisters have something to do with keeping it aloft, maybe. But here we have the observation pod that the main character is supposed to be in, and that's a nice example of it in use, or one of them in use. Well done. Skewer and Cymet. You would think on a planet that needed predatory beings, you would eventually have predatory creatures that were fast moving like that, right? I mean, you know, look at hawks and owls and falcons and even eagles. They're deadly and fast like that, and also delicate. The skewer's accordion-like wing muscles enable the creatures to make very precise adjustments in its control surfaces. Steep dives as well as lengthy glides are facilitated by increasing and decreasing the relative surface area of the wings. When you're doing art, if you're thinking about it down to that detail, you really, really have just a powerful imagination and creativity in you. It's really something. The carrion feeding module of the scavenger wing has a highly specialized digestive system capable of devouring food that is in an advanced state of decay. It is dropped with pinpoint accuracy from as high as 1,500 meters. The floating module picks up the feeding module in its own mouth, thus it appears to be devouring it in turn. And here's our cover creature, the Rugose floater. They were lazy creatures, and they flew in wide, slow circles. Sure is an interesting idea. Wow, that's an even better view of it there. When threatened, the Rugose floater releases a cloud of chaff-like particles that fragment its sonar image in order to blind predators. It doesn't always work. This floater has just been pierced by marauding skewers, which have been known to kill it for pleasure. So there's an observation cone as an example of a size comparison. That's a blister wing for scale. There's the cone for scale. There's the Rugose floater. The blister wing is a gigantic creature. Let's go back and take another look at it here. We had the blister wing. Ah, there's the blister wing. So there's the observation cone. There's the blister wing. He's more of a foreground element here, so that pushes it away even a little more in the image. Oh, that's really something. Here's the Eosapien. It hung before me as if probing my cone with its alien senses. We have some kind of gas bag that holds it up there. Sensory organs of some kind. This is just kind of Wayne Barlowe talent on full display there. This is how he does it. He's created creature with all of these interesting aspects. The Eosapien's sheath-like egg launcher right grows distended and releases the airborne oothecae, or egg projectiles, when atmospheric conditions are favorable. The multiple blisters on the Uthaka left will inflate with buoyant gases when its velocity diminishes. And that is definitely insect inspired. Oh well, there's a side view. Something didn't get away. Powerful arms and multiple gas bladders enabled the Eosapien to stalk and kill Darwin Ford's larger creatures. The opposable fingers and claw arrangement allows the limb to be used for killing, dismembering, and transporting prey. And of course, opposable thumb, opposable appendages means maybe eventually the development of intelligence, right? It's a hint anyway. They ascend again, leaving the steaming carcass in the darkness. That is a haunting image for sure, and that's a specialty of Wayne Barlowe. He's got your nightmare fuel ready to go. Eosapien hunting teams hurl their flechettes with deadly accuracy, trapping their prey in escape-proof staked pens. The giant floaters then move in from all sides for the kill. Okay, so they don't drop it on the creature, they use it to pen it in. That makes sense. That's pretty skillful. It would take a lot of intelligence. And so here we go with departure. It looks like the Yamaha left behind a stele of some kind. And that wraps up the book. And what a book. Boy, that is really something. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that browse through this amazing book by Wayne Barlowe. Expedition is one of his great works. He also has a few others that are probably just as great, including his tour through hell. I don't have that one yet, but Expedition itself stands out as a singular achievement of imagination and hard work. And you know, when you look at when this was published and how early the dates are on some of the artwork, Wayne worked on this for a long time, and it really is an achievement of artistic and technical skill. Okay, that wraps up our trip through this amazing book by Wayne Barlowe, Expedition. And if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Now then, let's take a look at a few of the other things that we might have coming down the pike as far as taking a look through some cool art books. And of course, we have to look through the book that started it all when it comes to Wayne Barlowe, and that would be this book, his amazing Guide to Extraterrestrials. I mean, this book, this is incredible. And the really cool thing about looking through this book is that many of the images, in fact, I would say almost all of them, relate to science fiction novels and other works, as is common with many such art books. Maybe down the road, we'll take a look at Mass by John Harris. I mean, holy cow, talk about an artist who's in touch with the source, right? He really, really makes beautiful artwork. So perhaps down the road, we'll have a look at that. A big favorite of mine for many years has been Sid Mead. So I have a nice collection of his works, and we can certainly grab a drink and take a stroll through some of his books as well. I also have his studio image folders. These things are amazing. I mean, I guess these are kind of for super fans, but there was a time when these were reasonably priced and pretty common, and they're now just very expensive. But you know, perhaps a video on these would be cool too. I mean, especially if you're a Sid Mead fan like I am. These things are neat. Their prices have gone through the roof. This is Chronovecta, which is all part of his, he had like a book set. And this is loaded with all kinds of studies and drawings. You know, you can see he worked on the movie Aliens. He worked on many movies. So perhaps I will look at that one too down the road. The other book in that set is this book, this book is just amazing. Chronoteco. This is quite a book. And this is also a beautifully made book. Just a little hesitant to get too wild with this one. You can see that's from Blade Runner. Sid's work is just alive with that beautiful complementary color palette. He used gouache, but he really knew how to make it come to life. This is another Sid Mead book. This is Sentinel, and I believe this is A Dragon's Dream. I thought it might have been a paper tiger. It's Dragon's Dream. Also full of Sid's work. It'd be fun to take a look through that one for sure. I remember I bought this copy of Century. Let's see, is this Century the first one? Yeah, this is the first Century book, because the other two is over here too. I actually bought this right from Sid at a book signing and gathering where he gave a lecture. So I got to hang out with Sid that day, and it was pretty neat. He was a very nice guy. For as famous as he was and as important as he was very accessible as a person. You know, it did not go to his head. He's a good guy. He's certainly someone you could talk to. There's a Century too. This is a hardcover. And I don't think I got this one signed, because I ordered this one through the mail. But it's also beautiful. And of course, we have John Berkey. That'll be great. That would be a great one to do. Also, Daniel Simon's Cosmic Motors. Boy, I remember when this book came out. He's really something. And of course, Chris Voss. Check that out. And one of my all-time favorites, Jim Burns. I've already mentioned this one. We're going to definitely look through that one. Another great one by Wayne Barlowe. And then we can go back in time a little and check out Planet Story, which was a collaboration between Harry Harrison and artist Jim Burns. And this was pretty early in Jim Burns' career, but the quality of the work, it's right there. Jim had definitely developed his style by the time he was doing this, and his style would change and grow over time because he's so good. That's the kind of thing that really good artists do, right? They just get better and better. So maybe in the future we can have a look together at some of these other great art books. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I do appreciate it. And have a good day.